I'll get this video in now because I sincerely hope this is the last time in history parts of it will be relevant. Hello, my name's Gavin, this is Genre Books, and today I want to talk about 3 works by Ingersoll Lockwood. Ingersoll Lockwood was born in 1841 to a fairly well-positioned family in the United States. He trained as a lawyer, and his first job at the tender age of 21 was to be appointed consul to the Kingdom of Hanover. It's a position he held for 4 years, and I think the position only came to an end because the Kingdom of Hanover was invaded and taken over by Prussia in 1866. However, that's the point where he came back to the States, and that's the point where he stopped working for the diplomatic service, and that's where he started his law practice in New York with his brother. By his early to mid-40s, he was making a very handy sideline to his legal practice in writing, non-fiction writing under a pseudonym, and on the lecture circuit. In the late 1880s and early 1890s, he begins to write books which are a mixture of fantasy and science fiction, aimed primarily at the children's market. He seems to be influenced by, I'd say, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland and Alice Through the Looking Glass by Lewis Carroll, and Baron Munchausen's narrative of his marvellous travels and campaigns in Russia by Rudolf Erich Rasp. And one thing he definitely takes from the latter is the very long titles of his books. 2 of the titles here: The Wonderful Deeds and Doings of the Little Giant Bob and His Talking Raven Tabib, and The Extraordinary Experiences of Little Captain Doppelkop on the Shores of Bubble Land. If he had stuck to those books, I don't think we would be talking about Ingersoll Lockwood today. However, through coincidence, he became known in literary circles again in 2016-2017, and spoken about a lot by people who had not read the books. But the books I've read in the last week or so for this video to give the game away. The titles are The Travels and Adventures of Little Baron Trump and His Wonderful Dog Bulger, Baron Trump's Marvellous Underground Journey, and 1990, The Last President. Later on, we can look at some of the stuff that people either sincerely believe or pretend to believe in for clicks. But at the time of someone pointing these books out, there's a flurry of articles in political magazines of people skimming these books, trying to paint some kind of eerie echo from Little Baron Trump and Donald Trump, the candidate and then president of the United States of America. Baron Trump is not his name. His name, Baron is a title, his name is Wilhelm. But it was not lost on these writers that Donald Trump has a son called Baron, although Baron is spelt differently. It was also not lost on some of these writers that John Barron is a pseudonym that Donald Trump sometimes went under. Not because he was writing something, but because he was phoning into radio shows to talk about what a great guy Donald Trump was. In fairness, Donald Trump has always denied this, and of course the man doesn't lie, but if you've ever heard one of those phone calls, it's either someone doing a very good impression of Donald Trump or the man himself. And writers needing to fill a column in a magazine drew attention to some of the parallels that they could see between the character of Little Baron Trump and Donald Trump. He was restless. He was always getting into trouble. He lived in a place that bore his name. Castle Trump for Little Baron Trump, Trump Tower for Donald. Little Baron Trump boasts quite often in both of the books about his brain. He's got a big brain. He's got a very active brain. It's a restless brain. It's one of the best brains that's going. He compares himself to Julius Caesar. He sues, by chapter 3 of the first book, he has sued a lot of people. He has sued his teachers because he believes that he has actually taught them more than they've taught him. He boasts about his book, the book you're reading. But all of these articles and all of these people trying to draw similarities and parallels out between the two are missing some, or I think I say purposefully missing some of the big differences between what we know about Donald Trump and what we read about little Baron Trump. Boastful though he is, Baron Trump really is smart. He is also empathetic. He also helps people. His best friend is a dog. There is a section in the first of the Baron Trump books where he fasts for a month and remains silent for that month. He is interested in the rest of the world. He wants to find things out. He is in pursuit of knowledge. And although in his adventures women tend to throw themselves at him, he is a paragon of moral rectitude and will have nothing to do with any of that naughty business. Well, let's forget about Donald for a moment. Let's concentrate on the books. They're not great. And I think they were, prior to this latest kerfuffle, justifiably marginal. They are slight works. There's not much in the way of satire here that I can discern. There is not much in the way of moral instruction, which I don't have a problem with. I think it can be something which is just entertainment for entertainment's sake. And some of the press notices at the time picked up on this. It had mixed reviews, but I'll pick a glowing review. This is from the Boston Times. We owe Mr. Lockwood thanks too for that he has neglected to wrap a moral around his tales and has given us simply a delightful example of the art of sustained fooling. I go along with that opinion, but I would say that maybe this is the passage of time, but that sustained fooling falls flat sometimes. The books, or certainly the first book, is just too repetitive. The same thing happens 4 or 5 times. Trump leaves his ancestral home, journeys to a foreign or unknown land, meets the people that live there who have evolved in all manner of quirky ways, has issues with them, and has to make his escape, either with them chasing him away or with them pleading for him to come back. But he is a restless soul. He's also a fairly unlikable protagonist. He is a braggart. He is very full of himself. And if it wasn't for the presence of Bulger, I think the books would be far worse. Now, I was expecting his little dog Bulger to be simply a throwaway sidekick. But I think Bulger really makes these books. He doesn't say anything, although Baron Trump often puts words into his mouth, usually words praising Baron Trump. But Lassie has nothing on Bulger. In the second book, having just saved Baron Trump from the clutches of a Russian, Baron Trump regains consciousness to find that Bulger, the dog, is steering the carriage they are travelling in order to get away from them. So he's driving the coach and horses. I think he might be one of the best animal companions that I've seen in a book. He's better than Lassie. He's better than Toto. I think he's in a class of his own. The second book in the series, the Baron Trump's Marvellous Underground Journey, is one that wanted to read for another reason as well. I am looking at Hollow Earth stuff, and this is a book that takes the late 19th century mania for the Hollow Earth and puts his own spin on things. Again, he is meeting like 4 sets of people who live in this underground land, but he doesn't return home between each encounter, so there is more of a journey rather than just a recycling. I think also in the second book a lot more thought has been put into the races. Maybe a hint of satire here, although quite who he's satiring I'm not entirely sure. There are people who are entirely transparent. There are people who have been underground so long that they have lost the senses of sight. They no longer speak, they can't hear. There are another group of people who are frozen, or their body temperatures are extremely low and live in a world of perpetual snow. And there are the rattlebrains who want nothing to do with knowledge, very proud of the fact that they know nothing. The books are about the same length, 200 to 250 pages, and I think I read the second book in half the time that I read the first. It was just much more enjoyable. You wanted to go back to it more. But I don't think the books, on their own merit, would be remembered today were it not for the coincidence of the Trump name. But there is a further coincidence. Before he wrote these books, he wrote a much shorter piece for adults called 1900 or The Last President. And again, people latched onto this as another coincidence. Here he is talking about what might be the final presidency because of some populist candidate. And on the surface, there is a lot of that here. There is a scene in this book where a mob marches on Fifth Avenue, protesting at people who are in a certain hotel on Fifth Avenue. That's where Trump Tower is now. It is the story of a populist candidate who, in an unlikely twist, becomes president, and the dissolution of the Republic by the end of his term. And when I heard about this, even I was thinking, this is odd. Then I read it, oddness dispelled. This is pure coincidence again, and this was being written by political journalists who should know better. I'm English, and I knew what was going on in 1890s America better than some of these American journalists do. Certainly better than some of these commentators who seem to, be farming clicks on how spooky everything is. How could you not know the Democratic presidential candidate in the 1896 election that William McKinley actually ended up winning? Okay, you might not know who the losing presidential candidates are. Although I think I could probably name every single one of them back to Jimmy Carter in the 1980 election. But in the 1896 election, it was, on the Republican side, William McKinley versus, on the Democratic side, William Jennings Bryan. And this book is about Bryan. This is not some character who we are trying to superimpose Trump onto. This was a real guy who was a populist and was probably beaten because of his policies. And this short book is simply Lockwood warning of the danger of following this man's policies. Am I talking totalitarianism? Am I talking nationalism? Isolationism? No. The insidious evil here is bimetallism, leaving the gold standard. And, that's an odd thing to base a book on. It is an odd thing to base a dystopic future prediction on. And it's a future that's come to pass with none of the issues that he makes here in this book ever coming to pass. I'm not an economist, so I think you could probably have an entire channel devoted to the impact of bimetallism, which is a policy that France followed. But he really is warning at a very simple level. Don't leave the gold standard. This is what Brian wanted to do. He was a member or spokesman for the Free Silver movement. Basically, instead of just using gold, they wanted to use silver as well. There's your bimetal. And the silver would be at a 16-to-1 ratio to the gold in value, and silver was going to be used as money as well as gold was. It's a difficult thing to be worked up about for a book, and I'm glad it's a slim book, because I don't think I would have read a 200-300 page novel about this. This is a novella at best. And I find it very difficult to draw any parallels between the 1896 Democratic candidate for president and Donald Trump, especially when the defining evil that Brian represents is that he doesn't like gold. If there's one thing we know about Trump, is that he absolutely does. Unfortunately, the feeling seems to have been, let's not have reading the books stand in the way of making our opinions about this. And should another argument against the banning of books in schools be needed, here is a salutary lesson. The amount of guff that has been produced about the parallels here by people who should know better, the political journalists, is one thing. The absolute insanity peddled by either credulous idiots or knowing hypocrites is something else. The rumours went into overdrive. We've not heard about this writer. Therefore, he must be fake. But he wasn't fake, he was just forgotten. You can go to the Library of Congress and you can see his works. You can see that he was a real person. Lockwood had legal cases, so there are things in the annals of New York legal literature. He was, ambassador, consul, whatever it was, to the Kingdom of Hanover. The guy existed. The books existed. You can see reviews of the books in newspapers from the 1890s. If you were to fake these works, why would you go to those lengths of altering all of these other records? Why would you go to those lengths and then have so many unsimilarities between the character and the person that he has now been associated with? Would it not make your story more compelling? Were there more similarities and less glaring differences? There must be another reason other than these things being fake. So people came up with that reason. Time travel. John G. Trump, one of Trump's, uncle or great uncle, he created a time travel machine with Nikola Tesla and went back in time and wrote some books and went back in time with them. It seems to fall down when you start to think about it for more than half a moment. But half a moment is the length of time of a TikTok video. So if you just grab people's attention for that long, that's all you need. And that is what one TikTok person did, and it went viral and they got 6 million hits. If I get a fraction of that, I'll be happy. I won't get it. I'll still be happy because I got to read these books. They're a bit silly, they're a bit fun, they're a bit light, they're a bit throwaway. They probably will be forgotten again now. I'm hoping so. In a way, I hope the books do last, but I hope they last because of the books themselves and not because of the association with this man. I hope the reason for the associations with this man is the thing that disappears into obscurity. They're odd little stories, and the story that then wraps it up is odder still. But I still think it won't be the weirdest thing I read when I'm talking in the next year or so about these mysterious lands, rediscovered lands, hollow earth peoples, and all the attendant stuff that comes with it. Of course, if he wins in November and gets a pet dog and calls him Bulger, then I'll just delete this video and we'll never talk of this again. Until next time.